Hello, this is Stanley. This is podcast number 3 for small contractors in a small town. Today, let's talk about contracts. First thing we talk about is getting your business established. Just go for it. Just do it. Second thing was estimating the heart of the business, really very complex. I could speak for hours on estimating, but I'm going to try to keep these at 15 minutes. If we get this progressed further, we'll do it, see if we can do it interactive where we can do questions and answers. This is mainly for the small contractors in small towns. A lot of information out there for the bigger guys, so this is for your smaller guys that want to try to go somewhere. Get some simple, usable answers. Contracts are the next phase. You've reviewed the project. You've priced it. You've been awarded. Now you're gonna contract to go do it. Contracts can come in many forms, like everything else. There's different versions, but there's some basic, simple ones. We talked about this in estimating, that there's a lump sum contract. You're going to tell somebody how much it's going to cost, all in, everything. There's a cost plus kind of contract. There's the time and material kind of contract. So the contract structures kind of mirror the estimating structures, how you're going about the project in the first place. Contract's very key because you're going to sign your name to it and you're going to be bound by it. And there's a lot of laws in probably your state. You got to go see how your state is. We're here in California, very regulated, a lot of contract laws. We have talked about some of those before, and we can get more into the minutia. In the first podcast, I showed you the thick California contractor license book, license law book, very thick. So a lot to consider. Hard to do in just these short podcasts, but again, if we can get interactive, we can get into more minutia. But the first thing is who's going to prepare who's going to write the contract. That's very important. Almost all humans that write a contract write it more in their favor than the other opposing party's favor. The truth is the contract is between both parties. It's both parties' contract. So first thing you got to do is just really be careful. Really be aware if you're taking a contract that's written by somebody else, because they're going to slant everything in their favor. And the contract's between the two of you. It's not just their contract and you have to take it. You can negotiate. You can add things, strike things out, reword things. Always do that. Don't just take it, sign it. Go through it, read it, make sure it's there. There's a lot of aspects about a contract. There also are pre-made contracts. There's a very big firm, entity that's been making contracts for 100 years. It's called the AIA, which stands for the American Institute of Architects. I do a lot of AIA contracts myself. They're pre-written. There's the different forms, the cost plus, the lump sum. You can find different versions of the contract. It's all pre-done. They cost money. You can probably figure out a way to get some of them without spending so much money. To belong to the AIA is a yearly expense, but then you can get all the contracts you want, but you got to belong to the AIA. There's other ways to do. You could probably get an architect friend who's an AIA to help you with that. You might be able to go get them. You used to be able to go to the AIA used to have offices. You could go buy the hard copy and you fill them out that way by hand, by longhand. But hardly anybody does anything longhand. Everything's technology driven now, and everything's on a computer or a laptop or iPad, a pad or something. But the key is to know all the integral parts of a contract and what you're getting yourself signed up for here, and what you're committing yourself to, and what you're going to have to honor. And it goes both ways. What is the other person going to be committing to? What are they going to honor? And what are they going to uphold? So make sure you understand all that. I suggest if you don't have a lot of experience, get your hands on some contracts, ask other people, find other people that have contracts, go through them, read them. This might be the first time you start involving somebody else. There are contract attorneys out there, construction contract attorneys will help you. Those things cost money though, more than likely. If you're a small contractor in a small town, you can't afford those kind of things. You're going to be relying mostly on yourself to understand what's in this contract, what it means. There are certain things that you're going to look for in a contract. I mean, first, it's going to be what's the project? What's the project about? Who are the participants? You and their entity. You want to make sure all those are correct and you have correct information. It's harder now probably to vet somebody than it used to be. You would think with all the stuff we have online, it'd be easier to vet people, but a lot of misinformation could be done. You make sure you know who you're really dealing with. Where's the location? You have a place where you've got to notify them of something that you actually have the right address at. So, two of the participants of the contract. And there are certain things, again, that are in most contracts. You're going to have the price and you're going to have the time. Those are probably the main things: is the amount, the parties, the time, and the amount, the price. But there's some more other aspects of a contract that you got to really watch and make sure it's in there. One of the first ones is the client's going to want to hold you to a penalty if you don't finish on time. They generally call that liquidated damages. Liquidated damages are pretty tricky. I don't recommend signing a liquidated damage contract. You won't be able to do public works without signing a liquidated damage contract. They're just, that's how they all are. They'll just move on, maybe the another bidder or something, if you won't sign with a liquidated damage clause in there. Liquidated damages are a complex thing. It's not easy to prove liquidated damages. I mean, it's saying somebody's damaged if the job didn't finish on time. Are they really damaged? That's the first question. A lot of times it's not, there isn't real damages, it's just perceived damages, or I could have done this, or maybe that would have happened. So got to really watch the liquidated damages. Plus, they're putting you as the sole person for why something might not get made in time, or a date is obtained. There are so many things in modern construction that go on that's outside of your control. Be very careful. I mean, we're going through this whole virus thing. We've had there's strikes. There can be accidents. Your truck shipping your doors could have got crashed and ruined on the road, and you got to start all over again. I mean, there's so many things out of your control that you got to really be careful with the liquidated damage contract. Make sure that it's you have the ability to, if you're going to be held to something, fine. You're going to be held to it and you're responsible for it. But something that happens outside your control, that should not penalize you. That's generally called a force majeure clause, and majeure is spelled MAJEURE, force majeure. And that is a nice clause to have in your contract where you say, hey, look, I'm responsible for what I can control, but if it's out of my control, I'm not responsible for it. So you want to make sure you have that in there. Changes, if the client makes changes, how do you go about changes? What's that mean? Money, time, impact on the project. A lot of people, again, if you got this contract that has a date on it and they want to have a liquidated damages and they start making a lot of changes, you got to make sure that you have clause in there that says, so if there's changes, I get more time. I've got to stop, start all over, cancel something, change the whole direction we're going on something, whatever. So you got to watch the clients that'll make a lot of changes. There are many other, minutia items in a contract, and you'll see that if you allow the other party to write it. It'll be several pages, probably written by attorney on their side. And again, you either need to have an attorney on your side. You might not be able to have the attorney help you a lot because of the cost, but you may be able to have enough money to pay one to just cruise through it and make sure the big stuff's in there, that you're not going to have one little slip up and lose your career and your company and your livelihood. So if you are a little uncertain, try to get some information before you sign the dotted line. Make sure you know exactly what's in there and what's not in there. Again, it's your contract as well as it is their contract, so don't feel you're boxed in a corner. Some of the times it's best to walk away from something if something doesn't look right, smell right, and you think somebody's trying to get you to do a whole bunch of stuff, take a whole bunch of risks, and you're just not going to be able to do this. Just walk away. It's better to do that than get yourself into something that can be really a mess. Generally, you kind of want to look at it like we have to have a contract. The old days we used to do handshakes, what they call it, did it all on a handshake. Walked up, talked, agreed to something, handshakes, went and did it. Those days have been long gone. Generally, you want something. in a contract. And small jobs, you may not want several pages of a big contract to go remodel a bathroom. There is another contract form that I've used and other people use, just something called a memorandum of understanding. So we're just going to sit down in 1 to 2 pages, just kind of write out the particulars. What's the job address? What are we going to be doing? Is there any kind of special thing in there, like a certain brand of toilet or something you're going to put in this bathroom remodel? And what's the price and what's the time, and some of the specifics, and you both sign it in this memorandum of understanding, and you get out of there. That better be something that you fully understand again what you're doing, and the client, somebody that you know, because whether it's that simple of a contract, whether it's a big, long, drawn-out contract, once you get to the point where you got to go start reading the contract, because there's conflict now, and people are getting upset with each other, and you start going back, well, what's the contract say? Generally, the job is going to be tough from then on out for you, because it's best that you have a contract and you put it on a shelf and you go do the job and you get paid, and client loves it and takes the project and goes and does what they want with it. Everybody's happy. That's what your goal is. That's what you want. But more times than not nowadays, we're getting very litigious in this world, is they go to the contract and see, okay, you're not doing this, you're violating this contract, you've not done this what you're supposed to, and that kind of stuff. Once it gets to that point, you want to make sure that you're protected in there and you have the language that's in there, because that's a tough situation for you to be in and start fighting with your client. You want to probably move on as best you can and not get into big tanglement and get into over what you perceive to be you're right and he's wrong, and you're going to just end up fighting over something. You could probably just give a little bit and move on and go to the next one to learn, and you'll learn more as you go through writing contracts, executing contracts, what needs to be in and what doesn't need to be in. I personally try to resist pushing any problem on the past project on a future client. That future client didn't cause that past problem, so be careful of taking all the past problems and forcing them on your future clients. You got to think about that as a business person. Is that fair and right to do that? But contracts are the important thing. More than likely, you're going to have to sign one on almost every project you're going to do. So you need to learn the ins and outs of it. Like I said, if we can get to a point we can answer some questions, we get more specific in the minutia of the contracts. But there's a lot that goes into them, and it's a very important thing to have. Just like to have it as like an insurance policy. It's there in case you need it for insurance, but let's just keep it on the shelf, just like insurance. We don't have the tornado come blow our house down, so we've had insurance, but we didn't really need to go, bring out the insurance and build a house over again, that kind of stuff. That's kind of how to look at it. But once you get into the conflict, the legal conflict over a contract, it can be very, very stressful, very hard to work your way through. And you got to just kind of make sure you're handling everything. I suggest everything you do, every email you send, every text you send, every letter you write, everything you say, everything you represent and do, that you kind of look at it like this is going to end up in a legal battle. I'm going to end up in front of a judge or a court and a jury or something talking about this. So every time you do something, put it in that kind of light, and you'll find you'll have less conflicts. In other words, when you write something, don't just say, well, the door over there, we moved it. Put the existing door that was already in dilapidated state was over on a wall here, and I moved it over to the wall on the west side. Be very specific about stuff like that. I mean, that sounds silly, but it takes a while to write that in a letter or a text or an email or something. But you'll find out that you'll be better off the more detail that you can do your business. Keep yourself out of conflicts over contracts and fighting them. So that's some basics on contracts. This is podcast number 3, Small Contractors, Small Town. And thank you. We'll move on to podcast number 4. Thank you.